And now I've got a little 1-bar loop playing that also has my joystick animation in it. Hi folks, welcome back. My name is Warbass. You're looking at the evolution of the B case. I know I mentioned this in my last video that there were going to be some changes and we're going to refocus on this case as its own kind of independent instrument from the A case, which is over there. So we're going to go over the module changes so far, talk a little bit about the kind of leftover HP that I'm still contemplating, rant a little bit about Bitbox Micro, what I like about it and dislike about it in the first 4 days of having it. But first I want to kind of cover an updated signal flow because I think it'll be relevant for some folks who had questions about how I'm processing things in the past and some advice that I've also gotten about processing things in the past. So just like it has always been, the drum sequencer is triggering the LXR. The difference now, instead of the LXR coming up into the cockpit and kind of taking up the first 3 channels here of a kick, kind of toms and snares, and then hats and stereo on this 3rd channel, leaving the 4th channel, which I used to use for poly go-go. And now instead, those drums are all coming up as kind of mono buses. So there's some overlap, like I think it's kick, both toms, snare and clap, hi-hats, coming up independently in mono signals into the mono chain of vortices. Vortices, not hi-fi, the regular one. That mono signal path is then coming out and being sent through the data bender and then into my, first it's being mid-sided into data bender, then into 100 grits, back into through the mid-side of the LRMS and MSLR. That signal is then coming into this first stereo in on the vortices. So LXR comes into the vortices, the mono stereo out, because there's the panning on the original mono mix. The mono stereo out bus goes through an effects chain and some mid-side processing, rejoins vortices. Then the master bus out, or master mix, I guess, out of vortices comes over into axis and crossfades against just my send bus. So what I end up kind of having is a panable, attenuatable, or I guess volume controlled mono bus of 4 elements that then go through this dry wet in kind of like 2-stage dry wet of a stereo path here. So I'm going to start with just a kick, which is coming through on this channel here. And I like having it on this channel, on the second one, because of this crossfade feature. First, I'm never going to really pan my kick, so there's no need to put it on channel 1, which has this panning option. Channel 2 and 3 share this crossfader, so I can kind of kill the kick that way, which is really nice because some of the kits that I like on the LXR and some of the things that I've made, the 2nd and 3rd drums, which I play with my kind of 2nd and 3rd channel out of the drum sequencer, and then are these 2 drum voices on the LXR. Those can be nearly additional kicks. And so having this crossfader here lets me kind of dial in how much I want of the kind of channel 1 kick, and then how much do I want of the kind of 2 tom elements. So just to demonstrate that real quick, I'll turn both of those on. This will be just the kick still. That'll be just the kick still, and then now it's just channel 3. Not always, needed, but useful to have for sure. So if we leave this back on, I want to go back to just the kick. I'm going to now bring in the kind of effects chain, which right now, if you're wearing headphones, it should have just gotten stereo basically. So I still have the joystick on channel 4 controlling the cutoff of the 100 grid, both the side cutoff there and mid cutoff there. And And I keep these kind of knobs on the actual module at like 1 p.m. so that when I throw it to this bottom corner, it's like a very muffled. It's not entirely off. It's just barely there. So you can't really hear it in this mix because I have this axis tuned all the way to the right, which means I'm getting the status of my effects chain through this knob. So this becomes like a volume on that too. Now it's just the original mix. But if I turn the axis to the left, now all I'm getting is my data bender and 100 grit version of this signal. So I can kind of choose how much I want the signal to be mixed into the dry signal, and then also choose how much I want to cut out or mix, I guess, that mixed version of the signal back into just the effect chain if I want to. It's a little strange having like a 2-stage send. And I know that there's more I can do with Vortices, but that's how I'm kind of initially set it up. To me, that is a vast improvement of the amount of control and whatnot that I have over the cockpit. The other nice thing that this provides for me is the ability to put Golden Master after the dual 100 grits. So before I had the LXR coming up into the cockpit, which is then kind of daisy chained behind the modules in a little like 3-pin connector from cockpit straight into Golden Master. And then I had that come out and go in through all the rest of the processing. That resulted in some pretty wild like stereo imagery and stuff like that. But one of my favorite parts about Golden Master, aside from like the mutable frequency bands, is the pink mode. So there's like 3 different always active, I guess not always active because you can long press to disable, I think. Long press to re-enable. There we go. But there's 3 different like pages here. I believe blue is just EQ volume, red is compressor amount, and then pink is stereo width. So when you turn this at noon, it's kind of like whatever the signal is that comes in. But as you turn this counterclockwise, you're going to push it towards mono. And since each of these knobs is a low, mids, and highs, I can take what is a kind of wild signal and then recenter some of that low end and let the highs stretch wide out. So let's hear that kind of in action here. Of course, I've all these muted. Let's put them all at noon. And let's get a really funky signal to work with. Just doing that, you can hear that low end just get really tightened versus that super muddy, really, really wide, right? Now, I don't think you need to completely mono all low end. Shh. I don't think you need to completely mono like all of the low end. I don't follow that, but I do think a little touch that way does really help the mix. If we bring things back in, conversely, cranking that up and adding some more stereo width on the mids and highs helps kind of counteract and let that low end sit a lot nicer. So that's what's going on with the new kind of mixing setup. I think there's more improvement that can be done. Obviously, about this second channel of axis that I'm trying to decide what to do with. And now I kind of want to shift gears and talk about the new right kind of chunk. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've taken the Bavaco Out V3 out of the A case and brought it over to the B case now. I've also added a little 2 HB crossfader. I've moved my IntelliGel crossfader from the left side to the right side because its role is now totally different. And now I've got, of course, the Bitbox Micro in the top half. So everything that's coming to the outs, first I just want to kind of preface this. You're listening to a recorded into Ableton version out of these stereo 1/4-inch outs. I'm listening to my IIIs on the headphone out. So that's going to matter in a second. I've got the little wireless III set up. The reason why that matters is because I have the Bitbox currently set up to be a kind of quantized live looper which has been a bit of a pain to get working. This is actually my second take doing this entire video. So if you're watching this, it means that I finally got it to kind of function how I want it to. But I have these 3 channels. This is like 10, 11, and 12 on the drum sequencer, triggering these 3 inputs as gates on the Bitbox. I have the entire mix, once it's done, multed here. Once it's coming out of the axis, it gets multed. One pair left, right goes into the audio ins of the Bitbox. Ooh. The other pair comes over and just goes into one of the channels on the crossfader. So this crossfader is what you're hearing and what I'm hearing too, because I have my, let's see if I can get cables out of the way so you can see this. My little Q switch right here is currently flipped up. So I'm hearing what you're hearing, which is on the A side, the live case, B side, Bitbox. Whoops, my stackables are all beat up and barely work. Now, why would I want this? But let's see, if I get a signal that I like, when I'm on one of these pads, I can come over here and take a recording and it's going to be quantized automatically for me. Now, if I flip this back over, we're hearing the Bitbox version. And I can demonstrate that by coming to the trigger for this drum. So now on the actual live case, it's playing a kick note. Now let's just do double kick notes. Every 8th note instead of every quarter. So if I throw this crossfader back to the A side, the reason why that's happening and why that kind of works so well is that on this channel, I am re-triggering the beginning of this loop with the drum sequencer. So it's not only quantizing the recording, which is a nice way that I can come up here and just like say, okay, now I want to record here. That's one of the goofinesses about this thing. Sometimes it just makes noise when I don't want it to. I can come up and trigger recording, and as long as I have the clock running, which I have a clock coming out as 16th notes basically for PPQN, into the 8th channel of, there we go, audio, gate, clock. I'm not using these other 2 gates yet. I haven't decided if I want to use those for additional kind of saved loops, or if I want to use them for like sample playing or something like that, something that I want to come out and maybe rejoin in the cockpit or rejoin in Vortices. But the nice thing about this, if we restart things, now say I want to record this on the pink channel, I can come in here and record that. As long as I've got that channel unmuted here, it will automatically start playing it. So now you're hearing it there too. I can come now down to my Q, flip my little switch here, and now I'm hearing the A side of the case because I've got my own crossfader, where this is essentially the same crossfader. This is the same crossfader, just rotated, but in mono. But it doesn't matter because it's just a Q input. So I can choose whether or not I want my headphones to listen to the A side or the B side of the case. So now I realize I have like a B case and an A case and an A and B side of the B case, but I can, in theory, have something running, or I can have, let's see, this loop playing. I can listen to the other side of the case, come over here, maybe choose a totally different sound or something. Of course, now I'm doing a bunch of stuff that you didn't hear, but I can resume, flip this switch back up. Now I'm hearing the master outs, and I can mix back in the thing I just cued. And if I like this, or I get this to another spot, or let's go back to clunk. If I get this to a place that I like, maybe I don't want to overwrite that loop. I can mute that loop, unmute where I want to put it, record that there, and now I've got a little 1-bar loop playing that also has my joystick animation in it. So this is obviously like a completely different set of muscle memory and, you know, skills to develop that I just spent, you know, the last month working on this, taking the entire case and sampling it with my A case and mangling it in these big kind of massive reverb tails and whatnot. This is now taking something I like and creating a really tight quantized loop so that I can create the next section on my own, you know, with the Q input, which is some squealing, prep that, and then transition back into it. Now, there's a couple things here that have been very helpful if anybody's trying to mirror this kind of setup. First, the amount of gain and insane distortion coming out of the 100 grits and coming out of the data bender with its kind of corrupt knob and all that fun stuff, initially completely overwhelmed the Bitbox. I wasn't using, when I was first setting this up, the cockpit and Golden Master at all, because I didn't think they were actually super necessary in my initial tests and patching. What I found was something might sound great to me on like the A side of the case. Let's calm this down so I can demonstrate. Something might sound great to me coming straight through kind of the analog path, but when I would sample it or create a loop of it and switch to the Bitbox version, it'd be clipped all over the place and sound just awful, like not possible to listen to. Terrible digital clipping, not the good kind of, you know, saturation and analog clipping. The thing that helped was putting this through the cockpit and Golden Master. Golden Master at the very end has, I believe, a limiter that's being applied. So those white lights that show up, they kind of like grow out from the middle to show the left and right channel there. That's it applying, I believe, a limiter to the outbound signal. So what was helpful for me was to come in and route things through these two modules. Then with this little tiny volume out knob, which is like kind of clicks as you turn it and isn't very easy to bump. Like that's actually a well-designed feature of this. The ability to set that on the front of the panel and set it on the back, but also not worry that you're going to bump it because it is so crucial to have it be right when you have it dialed in. That allowed me to have a mix that was at a safe volume. Even if I come over here and I get crazy and I turn the 100x gain on, the 100 grits, no matter what, I've given myself enough headroom on the recording that nothing's gonna start clipping over here. That was super crucial. The thing I had to do was just, you know, turn my, you know, headphones up and, you know, have to turn up the actual out of the case to, you know, record it somewhere because it's a little purposely dropped down just to make sure I've got enough headroom for when things get crazy. But that was pretty crucial in getting this to work. It was about a day of just tinkering with that to try and get the gain right after initially getting this record flow set up, which, like, if anybody has a module that they know lets you create a quantized loop that is stereo and can be re-triggered perfectly on beat and be played back this seamlessly without having to do, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 button presses to make a new recording, let me know. There's a video of the makers of this talking about how each feature is like one menu deep. They're like one button press away, but that's something this clearly was just not actually designed for. I don't think they expect you to be recreating, reloading in, and recording new samples like that as much as I want to. The other thing that's frustrating, or I guess for me, I would love, because I almost will never use this interface to trigger something, right? Like that, I have this here. That's supposed to trigger something. That's not what I want it for. I would love if these 8 squares, if I tapped it, took a quantized recording based on all of the settings that I've got in here to the square that I touched. That's what I want to be able to like remap these, you know, I guess only just the three that I've got configured here to do something else, because I don't plan on ever using this as like a terrible tiny little MPC. The one thing that I've found already in the little bit of time I've been playing with the setup, which I'm at like day 3 or day 4 with this arrangement, is I would love to have something that comes after this crossfader to help glue stuff together. Right now, I'm leaning towards something with a reverb or a multi-effect. I think the Chaos Devices Timmy Zoara, I can't remember what the full name of it is, the Timmy one, it is probably a contender. I only have enough HP for that, plus the other module I want, which is the, I think, Raucha Legio, I can't remember how the first word is spelled there, but it's the 6 HP Legio module that has the stereo DJ filter on the top with the clickable bypass, which I think is something I've wanted for forever. I always plan on getting an Overseer, but they're kind of impossible to come by, and this is smaller and also is part of the Legio platform, which I love, the Libre Legio that I got over there. So I kind of want to get rid of Zadar, get rid of my little blank here, slide this whole top row over, probably get rid of the expander on the Vortices, which will give me enough room for this, then have a little multi-effect here, likely tied to a reverb and a delay most of the times, and then that stereo filter here. That way I could map those to the joystick and do some swells of kind of high passing the mix with a bunch of reverb, drop those out, and also transition parts at the same time. That, to me, seems like it would be really satisfying and also help glue in the kind of post crossfader mix together. That way I could have some things blur across as I am leaving a loop. There's a little bit of reverb that will smear over on top of the new part. And just even if it's a tiny bit, like 25% wet dry all the time, even less, that'll help just make this a little less abrupt. And I've also, when I was doing all the July sets, I nearly always had the Starlab at least a tiny bit on, even if I was just playing this case. I just think a little bit of reverb on the mix can really, really help. Now, the nice thing about Starlab is it's got that low damp, so you can, apply it to just the top end of the mix, and you don't have to really worry about muddying things up. Not sure if that Timmy module has that. I've got to do a little bit more research. If anybody has other ideas for a kind of effect approach, maybe the bat verb is another option. Plus, then I think that Legio filter is going to be the other thing to get. But that'll just shift over, and then this will be kind of a final end of chain mixing effects. A distortion and glitch path mixing will kind of be right in the middle. And then modulation, controller, mix, and then down here I have my FM radio module, which is kind of filler, but might be a fun thing to have at some point to sample into there to make something else out of these last two slots that I'm not sure what to do with yet, because I guess this one is always clock, and these two are always going to be taken up by the ins of the audio. So that's the state of the B case. Let me know if you have any advice or questions or thoughts on this. Again, still pretty new with both of these, so if there's something glaring that I'm missing about the configuration or setup, let me know. One thing specifically that I would love to be wrong about is I've got my recording set to record quant to 1 bar, but I would love to be able to set the kind of playback quant to 1/16. And it seems like, if I make a new recording, even if I come in here and edit this to the quant size to 1/16, because that way I can trigger the same loop more than once down here. So if I've got like a simple loop playing, I could do some kind of beat repeat of X here with this quant either off or 1/16. But even if I set that and I come back up and I do new recording, I want the recording to be quanted to a bar. That way I don't have to worry about when I come up and touch record. If I just get something I like, I can come up, hit record, and I know that the next bar will be recorded, on beat. I still want to be able to then re-trigger it at a different quantization. It seems like as soon as you do that recording quanted to a bar, it erases the setting you had of playback being not quantized or quantized to 16th notes. That's a little annoying, to be frank. But maybe I just haven't read the manual enough yet. We'll see. That's it. I think next video might be maybe a little bit more of this, or we'll go do some AK stuff, because that's also had some things move around. Until next time, peace.